For this painting, I'm beginning with my Naples yellow hue, which is a nice warm yellow, and I'm painting it all over the turtle's shell, just avoiding the area towards the right where I'm going to start blending in some cooler colors. Here I'm adding some cobalt blue on the very far right side of the turtle's shell, very watered down. And this is kind of showing the reflection of the ocean above him, the sun shining through. I'm adding a little bit of dioxazine purple in the center point, kind of connecting the yellow and the blue. And then I'm painting in some of that light purple on the outer edges of the shell, and then transitioning to red as I move up towards the left. For the neck, I'm starting with my Naples yellow again and just painting that in, and then adding some spots on top of the head using very watered down paint. This fun technique is where you're just dropping in paint inside of each of those little puddles, and you can just watch the paint blend and bloom inside of each little spot. I'm using a lot of purple for this painting. My main colors are bright red, dioxazine purple, and Naples yellow, and I love seeing what happens within each of these spots as I blend the colors. To make a sea turtle look realistic, you do have to make sure that you're paying careful attention to your reference photo, getting correct values as those change and blend on the spots, and making sure that you're painting accurate details. Now for the flappers, I'm starting again with my Naples yellow and just laying down a base layer of color, very light. This will be almost imperceptible once I add the spots over the top. And while those dry, I'm going in a little bit in the shell and just painting one of the shell segments using Naples yellow and bright red. For each section, I'm carefully painting around those white outlines. And the way I sort of visualize these spots is they almost look like individual mini sunsets within each shell shape. And so I'm starting with my Naples yellow, and from there, the red and the purple are just exploding. And it's just so much fun and so beautiful to paint. All of this is wet and wet, so that the colors will blend naturally together as I lay them down side by side. I'm adding some neck wrinkles just with that light red while it's on my brush. And now that the flappers are dry, I can go in and paint all of these little spots. I'm using a variety of values within the spots, dark to light, depending on what I see in my reference photo. The colors I'm using are watered down dioxazine purple, and then just dropping in some cobalt blue or ultramarine to blend into that purple. So these are my three main colors for these spots. It's so much fun. It's like painting a mosaic. I'm not being completely accurate with the photo here. For the large major shapes, I am trying to pay careful attention to my reference photo, but once I go into those smaller details, each of these little pieces, I'm really just painting however they fit, and I'm not following the photo exactly. This gives me a little bit more freedom and helps me paint a little bit faster, and I think it still looks very realistic. For some of these spots, you'll see I'm going really, really dark, especially the ones that are more in the shadow or aren't quite as turned upwards towards the light coming from the surface of the water. And again, I'm just being really careful to make sure each of these spots don't touch each other, that there's a little bit of that white all around each one, and that's creating that beautiful, realistic detail on these flappers. Just paint the shapes however you want. Again, as long as you have the major details, it'll look really realistic. This very last shape has some Naples yellow in it, so slightly different color change. And then for the other flapper, I'm doing this the exact same way as the first one, making sure my base wash is completely dry. But this section is the most time consuming in the painting, painting all of these little shapes within each flapper. Just get lost in the process, have fun painting these details. I like to listen to audiobooks or music while I'm painting, and it helps me just become immersed in the process of painting. With each little shape, I'm starting with a flat wash and then dropping in colors if I want to mix it up a little bit and make it even more beautiful. The flat washes are fine, but I really love adding extra colors within each one, wet and wet, and watching them blend and bloom together. Now that the flappers are done, we can continue with the shells, and I'm just working in sections. Again, each section to me looks like a sunset. I'm starting with the yellow and then adding some bright red, and then adding some purple. I'm just carefully avoiding those white rim shapes around each piece. The largest shell shapes take a little bit longer, but really you don't have to be exact here. Again, just like with the flappers, use your own intuition and just have fun with the colors. Get an approximation. Before we go to the next part of the video, I just want to let you guys know that this tutorial is available in real time. Just head over to emilyolsonart.com where you can access all of my fully narrated real-time tutorials for just a small amount per month. I also include a sketch and reference photo with those tutorials, as well as a list of all the supplies I use so that you can follow the exact steps to paint along with me. With the Fearless Artist membership, you have access to my Watercolor Jumpstart video course, which is the perfect place to start if you're brand new to watercolor. There's also a series of 20-minute tutorials that will help sharpen your skills and give you delightful, frame-worthy little wins in your watercolor journey. And join our private Facebook group where you can share all of your amazing artwork and get feedback from other artists. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can see all the tutorials that are currently available, and I'm adding more every month. All right, let's get back to the video. You really only have to be approximate with your color placement. As long as the values are correct and you're paying careful attention to the details like those rims around each shell shape, it will look beautiful and realistic. I'm having so much fun with the wet and wet technique, just dropping colors in. Most of the time I'll start with that yellow base and then add the red and then the purple on top. Along the outer rim of the shell, there's a bump around each one, and I'm making sure that when I'm painting those in that I'm staying true to the shell shape that I see. Towards the right side of the shell, where we painted that initial wash with the blue and the purple, I'm going over it again with some darker values, but still with the same colors that I started with. And then I'm painting some red around the outer edge. Once again, I'm painting section by section, starting with yellow, adding some red and then some purple. Since this side is towards the light and is a little bit more washed out, I'm painting more loosely and not concerning myself with the details quite as much. I think this variety in texture and style is really adding some beauty to the painting. Once again, for each shell shape, I'm starting with my starburst or my sunbeams of Naples yellow and then adding in the red, blending it all wet and wet. I'm adding a new purple here. This is cobalt purple. It's a little bit more pink in color, and then dropping in some dioxazine purple on top of that. Notice I'm not painting everything flat. My brush strokes are really varied and I'm using a lot of different colors. For the very last shell shape, once again, starting with wet and wet, using clean water in the area and then dropping in yellow, red, and purple. The only areas that I need to be very careful to paint around are those white little outlines around each shell shape. This is helping the shell look realistic and bony. I'm finishing up the shells with some more purple and red and Naples yellow, and again carefully painting around those edges. With the right side dry, I can add in a couple of little wet on dry details. And then the final details on the turtle are the tail and the back flapper. I'm using a darker purple flat wash on the tail first, and once that's dry, I'll go in with some more details. And then for the foot, I started with a flat wash of very watered down purple. Once that was dry, I start carefully painting on my mosaic shapes. For these, I'm using a little bit darker value, since in the photo, my turtle is starting to swim upwards towards the surface, and this area of the turtle would be the furthest away from the light source and therefore the darkest. So all of the spots are going to be a little bit darker. And just like I did with the front flappers, I'm starting with the largest shapes and trying to make those accurate, looking at my reference photo constantly to make them as close to the real thing as possible. And then for the smaller mosaic pieces within, I'm just fitting them wherever they look good. and making sure that there is a nice white outline around each one. They're all different shapes, all different sizes, and just like in real life, nothing is perfectly symmetrical. There's going to be a ton of variety within these spots. Once those are finished, the tail is already dry now, so we can add in the spots on the tail too. For the shadow, I'm just using some neutral tint or black. You can use any dark color on your palette for this, and just carefully painting, following along the contours of the shell, and then going a little bit lighter in value with a blue as it turns toward the light. Now I'm adding some dark purple wrinkles on the neck for a more realistic look in that area. And once that back flipper is dry, I can add a flat wash of purple for more of a shadow. For the background, I'm switching to my 3/4 inch flat wash brush, wetting the paper above the turtle, and then just dropping in some brilliant phthalo blue, which is one of my favorite colors for painting Mediterranean water. And I'm mixing in some darker blues too, just to add some variety. In some of the areas of the background, I'm painting wet on dry so that some of the white of the paper shows through. And then I'm overlapping some of the blue across the shell of the turtle, using different brush strokes going in different directions. You'll want to add as much variety as possible. This is where you can really have fun with your painting and just make it look super painterly and brushy, but be careful that your design is pleasing and not something that's just done haphazardly. I'm adding some spatter for my very last effect, and this is helping it look even more like our turtle is in the water and there's maybe some bubbles. It's really just one of my favorite effects to add with watercolor because I think it's so interesting to look at, and it's also really fun to do. So there's our finished sea turtle painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.